This is the Registered Behavior Technician course presented by Shaza Attar. The course content was created by Shaza Attar and is the property of Autism Therapy and Training, Inc. All rights are reserved. This training program is based on the Behavior Analyst Certification Board 2018 RBT Task List 2nd edition and is designed to meet the 40-hour training requirement for the RBT credential. The program is offered independent of the BACB. Remember, in each class, we will have our active listening, a quiz, and a competency assessment. Everyone has preferences. Some like candy, some don't. Some like to listen to rock music while others listen to country music. Welcome to our class on preference assessment. I'm your course instructor, Shaza Attar. Today we're going to look at the next task list item, which is preference assessments. Taking a client's preferences into consideration is a crucial part of your intervention and will determine the success you'll have when pairing with your learner. A preference assessment is used to identify potential reinforcers. Without strong reinforcers, children may engage in problem behaviors, escape tasks, have poor relationships with their instructors, and simply not be motivated to work. Identifying strong reinforcers will also help increase desirable behaviors. These assessments can help provide information about what a child is highly motivated for or possibly not motivated for at all. It's important to remember that a reinforcer today may not be a reinforcer tomorrow. So, how do you know if an item is a reinforcer? When an item is a reinforcer and it is delivered contingent on a behavior, that is an object, toy, edible, follows a behavior, we see an increase in that behavior over time. Reinforcement is the process in which delivery of a consequence will increase future occurrences of a behavior. So if an item such as a toy or edible follows a behavior and increases that behavior over time, we can say it's a reinforcer. We cannot assume that all children like bubbles and Play-Doh. Preference assessments can help us identify what a child will gravitate towards. Some of the ways we can conduct preference assessments is by asking, conducting free operant observations, or trial-based methods. And I'll talk about each one as we go through today's talk. Asking about the client's preferences is an indirect method of assessment. That is, you can ask the client a series of questions about their preferences. But this would depend on their verbal level and ability to answer questions about what they like or don't like. You can use open-ended questions such as, what do you like to do during your spare time? What is your favorite sport? You can also give a child or an individual choices before or after a task completion. You can ask if they want cars or to watch a movie. This again would depend on the client's verbal ability and ability to make choices. With young, typically developing children, you may ask them choices between two items. So you might say to them, which one do you want? Chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? And they may select the last option given just because it was the last thing that they heard. So you want to be aware of this. Giving your learner a choice may not be the right strategy to assess the reinforcer. You can also conduct an indirect preference assessment questionnaire with caregivers, asking them what their child currently likes, what they used to like. Some use the reinforcement assessment for individuals with severe disability, also known as the raised questionnaire, which is a structured series of questions to ask caregivers and teachers about the learner's preferences. For example, one of the questions on the raised is, some children really enjoy looking at things such as mirrors, bright lights, shiny objects, spinning objects, or a TV, etc. What are the things that you think Johnny most likes to watch? And this is the first question on the raised. Parents are great at knowing what their children like. They will tell you about TV shows they watch, toys they play with at home, foods they enjoy. They can also tell you things they don't like. My first intake assessment usually involves asking parents a variety of questions about their child so that I can prepare for the child's first few days at the center, especially when we're conducting assessments. However, I don't rely on these, since we're in different environments and have different toys, and the child may gravitate towards other things. And ultimately, that's what you want. You want them to gravitate towards other things. The indirect assessment is a start, but you will be required to dig a little deeper when you begin interacting with your learner. So let's talk about free operant observations. So what are they? They are when you observe and record what the learner engages in during play. You may need a dedicated room or space to run this assessment. You'll place items on the table or floor and allow your learner to freely interact with toys. You would then measure the duration of the interactions with toys and rank them. For example, suppose you put out Cars, Play-Doh, and Connect 4. The learner walks around the room, approaches cars, and plays with them. You begin timing from the moment they begin playing with that toy until they leave it. Some children may play for a few seconds while others may play for several minutes. This method of assessing potential reinforcers is great because you don't need to take toys away from the learner, which is always a better choice for children that engage in problem behavior when you remove a toy away from them. So it's really important for new children in your program or new clients in your program to not engage in these behaviors or for you to trigger these behaviors accidentally, because you want to pair yourself with a positive environment. The disadvantage to this method is that a child may only access the same toy and stay with that same toy the entire time, and it becomes impossible for you to rank them. Free operant assessments may only identify 1 to 2 items, so you will need to conduct other assessments to find out more reinforcing items as well. A competing items assessment is when you can observe the child playing with toys in the environment and measure how often and long they engage in that undesirable behavior during that time. You're looking to see what will compete with your undesirable behavior. So suppose your learner engaged in vocal scripting, so repeating sounds, or maybe they're repeating phrases from a movie or a song. When the learner begins to play with a musical toy, the vocal stereotypy or scripting stops. We may be able to identify what toys and activities would replace the need for the scripting. I want to tell you a little story. I had a 7-year-old boy that would engage in vocal stereotypy, where he would repeat a string of sounds during play. We took partial interval data on his vocal stereotypy when engaged in preferred puzzles versus playing with his preferred puzzles and access to music. We found that his vocal stereotypy was at 15% when he had access to the music and puzzle, and about 80% without music. We could see that music was competing with that vocal stereotypy. All right, so let's talk about free operants. There are 2 types of assessments here. The first is contrived free operant, and the second is naturalistic free operant. Contrived free operant assessments start the learner off with exposure to the items. They get an opportunity to interact with them prior to the start of the assessment. The exposure to the item is brief, and it's non-contingent, meaning that it is not delivered based on the learner's behavior or what they have done. They simply get access to the item and they don't have to do anything. They don't have to clap their hands or throw a ball or do anything fancy for you. They get it freely for a few seconds. Then these items are placed in the assessment environment and data is taken. The observer would take duration data to see how long they played with each item as described earlier. Now let's talk about naturalistic free operant, which is conducted in the learner's natural, everyday environment. This could be the child's home, daycare, or place of therapy. This is the less intrusive method of assessing a child's preferences. You're not manipulating anything here, which is the beauty, but allowing the child to freely play in their environment and taking the length of time they play with each item. This gives you an idea of what they prefer most to least. The challenge with free operant observations is they can be time consuming, and many stay away from them because of that. However, studies have been conducted to show that a 5-minute brief free operant assessment provided information about the child's preferences, which make them so much easier to use in practice. The other downside to these procedures is a child may not leave a reinforcer and stay with that one item the entire time. The advantage is children that engage in problem behavior due to removal of a reinforcer with these procedures won't have those problem behaviors because you're not taking anything away from them. All right, so let's do another Scrabble word. Take a stretch, and here comes your word. So the word is oi, which is spelled O-I. This is used when you're trying to get someone's attention. It always surprises me when you can use 2 vowels in Scrabble. It makes me laugh, and people really don't like it, but all right, moving on. So let's get into trial-based methods. These are used quite often in practice. Stimuli are presented in a series of trials. The stimulus is preferred if it is touched or held more often. There are 3 types: single stimulus, paired stimulus, and multiple stimulus. The single stimulus preference assessment may not be sensitive to the child's true preferences. Some children will take any item that you place in front of them just because it's in front of them. Something we want to keep in mind when we're using these kinds of procedures. The child is exposed to the item before the assessment, and then during the assessment, the item is placed in front of the child once again, and the item is placed one at a time. The therapist would then record how the learner interacts with that item. For example, you may indicate that they consumed it, pushed it away, picked it up. These are ranked based on the number of times it was selected out of the number of trials conducted. So you may conduct 10 trials and get a percentage of how often they chose cars when exposed to them. In studies that have conducted single stimulus preference assessments, the learner was exposed to 16 items and each one 10 times. Now you can see how time consuming this can be. From a practical perspective, it may not be our most preferred selection in determining potential reinforcers. Also, many children do not like getting 20 to 30 seconds of access to an item such as playing on the computer. Why? Well, imagine you get 30 seconds on Facebook or Instagram. It simply is not enough time. No one gets really anything done, and you don't get that feeling of, I got to play this or I got to check this out. Rather, you may find children will fight you when attempting to give up that reinforcer. If a child is playing a game and they haven't had a chance to pass a level or maybe even get started, that could trigger some problem behaviors, so beware of that. Often individuals rather accumulate their time so they can play with that item for a longer period of time later. Think back to effectiveness of a reinforcer in our reinforcement class. One of the factors we reviewed was magnitude. The more time or amount of the reinforcer, the more it will impact the effectiveness of that reinforcer. To clarify this for you, we had a learner that requested Fruit Loops as an edible reinforcer. When one Fruit Loop was given to the learner contingent on the target behavior, we saw a decrease in that behavior. We began questioning the true value of that Fruit Loop. Was it really a reinforcer? Did he really want it? So then I decided to prompt the correct behavior and give him access to the container of the Fruit Loops and allow him to help himself in a sense. He took about 3 to 4 Fruit Loops and we saw a significant improvement in his behavior, trial after trial. So here we offered that one stimulus, but we adjusted and changed the amount to make it more effective. So you can see that when you're running these kinds of assessments, you may run into some issues. All right, so let's take a look at the single stimulus preference assessment. So with the single stimulus, you're going to need one item to be placed in front of the learner. When you do the preference assessment, you're also going to need the data sheet and you're going to need the timer. So you need to time how long they engage in the activity. So these are the items that you'll need to prepare for the actual assessment. So my learner is sitting with me. I present the item and I say, and I don't need to say anything. I can say, play with it or just leave it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually observe and record how the learner interacts with it. So in this situation, in my notes here, I might write down that they are, picking it up, they're touching it, and that's good. If the learner, for example, I present it to them and then they push it away, in the notes I'm going to write push it away. So again, on your data sheet, what you're going to have to do is fill in the learner's name, the date, who conducted the assessment. You're going to list out the activities or the reinforcers or the potential reinforcers that you have, and then you can jot down the amount of time. So let's do another one. So let's say now the time is done. I'm now going to present my learner with another item. And so I'm going to start my timer. Okay, so they let go of the item. That was about 13 seconds. So I'm really looking at the time that they start touching it, engaging in it, to the time that they stop touching it, which would be an indication potentially that they are no longer interested. So for that item, I would write 13 seconds. I'm going to take this item away and present another item, zero up my timer, and okay, so I'm going to stop my timer here. So that was about 10 seconds. As you could see, initially they started to interact with the item, touching it, try to stack it together, and then they pushed it away. So in my notes, I would write exactly that. So we know that it lasted 10 seconds, but just before that 10-second time had ended, they pushed it away. So on another presentation, and that's why we need to do these multiple times, I might present it at a later time. Let's say this is now, later on in the morning, and what I'm going to do is present it, and I'm going to wait. Do they touch it? Do they push it away immediately? What's going on? And okay, so they touched it for less than a couple of seconds, and then they pushed it away immediately. So I can jot that down, and then when I start to rank things, I'll know that the learner isn't really engaged in this item or doesn't really like this item, and it's not going to rank very high on the preference assessment. So that is how you conduct the single stimulus preference assessment. Paired choice, originally known as forced choice, was developed by Fisher and colleagues in 1992. The learner is presented with pairs of items and data is collected. You can indicate whether the child or the individual selected it, consumed it, or no response, or engaged in avoidance behavior. Now, the child is, in a sense, forced to make a choice between two items. That's the whole point of the assessment. These items are ranked in order based on the percentage of trials. You get a better hierarchy with these assessments when they're conducted in this way and in this method. Items need to be counterbalanced and equally presented on the left and right side to avoid any side biases. Some learners tend to select one side versus the other due to motor impairments or past experiences, with one side being reinforced over another. If your learner is selecting one side only, by switching the sides, you can ensure that the child is selecting the item because of a preference and not a side bias. However, this preference assessment method is not for a learner or individual who picks only the left side or the right side. The limitation of this assessment is that the number of trials needed to be conducted, like many of the other assessments. So that you can get the hierarchy, you need to do so many trials. It's very time consuming. We use this method at the center. We have condensed it slightly so that we can make it fit in our everyday practice, and it has helped us identify potential reinforcers. So you can do the same at your center or in your therapy. All right, so for the next one that we're going to look at the pair choice preference assessment. And here the therapist is to gather potential reinforcers. So you might be gathering 16 items. At the center, we sometimes will gather about 12 items, and we're going to replicate this. We've tried to shorten it a little bit just because they can be time consuming. But you want to make sure that you have your data sheet, and on your data sheet, again, you're going to indicate the learner's name, the date, who's conducting it, and then you have item A, B, C, D. You're going to write those down. So if I had the fire truck, I'm going to write for item A is the fire truck, and I would put that in. If I had the blocks or the Lego blocks, for B, I'm going to put in Lego blocks. Now, of course, you want to prepare this before you're with your learner. You don't want to do this while your learner's with you, because they may not be able to sit and wait for that. They might start engaging in problem behavior, and these are things you want to avoid. You don't want to start your session off not on the right foot. So make sure you do this before, get this set up, and that's, in terms of when we're looking at preparing for a session, that's what we're looking for, is you're prepared to conduct the paired choice preference assessment. Then what the therapist is going to do, I'm just going to move this over, is they're going to place 2 items in front of the learner, and I don't like to have the items too close together or too far apart. You want to have them in a position where they're relatively far from each other so that it doesn't look like it's the same item. You don't want to have the item too close to the learner, because that's going to make it too easy for the learner. Because if I had it right there, the learner may, touch the one that's more convenient for them, the one that's closer. So I want to make sure that it's placed in a way where there's a little bit of effort for the learner to actually take that item. So I've placed the items at a distance that I think is good, allowing the learner to again have a little bit of effort to reach for it, but not too much of an effort either, so that they don't engage in that behavior at all. And now I'm going to wait a few seconds, allowing the learner to make a selection. So I can say something like, pick one, and then once they pick one, I'm going to indicate which one that they picked. And so on my data sheet here, as they're interacting with it, I'm going to give them, let's say, 30 seconds or so to play with it. On that trial, for trial 1, I'm going to circle A for fire truck, and so I know that they selected A. Now, if you remember, I said earlier that you want to make sure that you are placing the items in different positions to counterbalance. You don't always want to present the fire truck and the Lego in the exact same way, or even if it was, let's say, the fire truck and book, I don't want to always put the fire truck on the same side, because then you get biases to one side. They might be a left side bias or a right side bias, so be careful of that. By switching it and making sure that the items are on different sides, you counterbalance that. So if, let's say, my learner picked the books, so now this is my right side, but it's my learner's left side. So just pick a side. So I'm going to call this the right side for me. But if I'm talking about my learner, I'm going to talk about it being a left side bias, because that's what they're selecting on their left side. So I present the 2 items. They pick that one. So that's so I would indicate that on the sheet. Let's say then I'm going to take that away. My turn. Thank you. And I'm going to present 2 items. They're going to pick. Oh, and they pick again on the left side. So I mark that down. So then as you look at your data sheet, you start to notice that the items on the left-hand side are being selected more. So then you know that a paired choice preference assessment may not be the right choice for that individual. So that's basically the paired choice assessment. Place the 2 items, tell them to pick one, they select one, mark it down on your data sheet, and continue on through and finish all items, making sure that you are switching up the array so you ensure that there's that counterbalance. Preferences change from day to day, moment to moment, so you need something that is easier to conduct and not as time consuming. Over the years, researchers began looking at other ways to simplify these assessments, to make them more practical. Multiple stimulus preference assessments are conducted by placing an array of 6 to 8 items in front of your learner. Say pick one, let them engage in it, record your data, then you would rearrange the array and begin again. The repetition of these trials produces more stability. There are two types of multiple stimulus preference assessments. The first one is a multiple stimulus assessment with replacement, MSW. The same number of items are in the array. The array is removed and presented again after 30 seconds. In this assessment, the items are not removed. Therefore, a disadvantage is if there is only highly preferred items, the learner will keep interacting with that item. All right, so now we're going to conduct a multiple stimulus preference assessment. And here you're going to be placing about 6 to 8 items in front of the learner. Now I've placed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've placed 5. I had to count it for you, sorry. Just because the table is a smaller table and I want to make sure I get everything on camera for you guys. But I've placed 5, but you can place about 6 to 8 items depending on whether you're doing the full assessment or not. And basically what you want to do is have the items in front of the learner. You have to make sure that the learner is able to select from, having more items on the table. Some learners are not able to, so be sure that you speak to your supervisor about that. And so from these items, I would say to the learner, pick one and allow them to engage in that item for a short period of time. Again, it might be 20 to 30 seconds. So pick one. Okay, so they take that item. Now with the multiple stimulus preference assessment here, I'm not taking anything away. I'm going to just rearrange the array. And then my turn. Thank you. And here, what I'm looking for is a hierarchy. So I'm going to mark down that the first one they took was the telephone. So you mark that down on your data sheet. And now I'm going to say pick one. Okay, so they picked another, so I'm going to mark that one down and give them some time to interact. Now, this is where your timer is really good. I always tell therapists, how do you know that you gave them 30 seconds? And they say, well, I'm counting in my head. Don't count in your head. Just use your timer. It's as simple as just clicking a button and giving them that time. So we're going to stop here. My turn. Thank you. I'm going to rearrange the array again. Again, there's no rule as to how you rearrange it. Just make sure it's not in the same position every single time. Pick one. And they went for the telephone again. So now I'm starting to see a little bit of a preference. But again, it's too soon to say because this is only my third trial from these 5 items. So I'm going to let them interact with it for about 30 seconds. Again, get your timer going, mark your data, and we're going to pretend that 30 seconds was up. And my turn. Thank you very much. What a great listener you are today. All right, pick one. Okay, good. So I'm going to mark the data down, give them time, start my timer again. Okay, time's up. My turn. And now I'm going to, bigger ones. All right, pick one. Okay, so now she went for 2. So as you can see, I'm going to stop and I'm going to try to block her from selecting 2. So I can redirect her arms and her hands and say, pick one. Okay, good. So I'm going to block that other arm and allow her to take that one. I don't want her to select 2. I'm going to encourage her to just select the one. Now, again, if this is a problem that you are having during your MSW, then you may need to reconsider the assessment and pick something else that is easier for the learner, because making that choice is fairly difficult for them. So, so for this one, I'm going to mark it down, but I'm also going to make a note that she did go and select some of the other items and selected multiple ones. Okay, and that is how you conduct a multiple stimulus preference assessment. MSWO is multiple stimulus assessment without replacement. Items selected are not replaced with another stimulus. You get a hierarchy of preferences. Items can be ranked. Do 5 presentations of the 6 to 8 stimuli to see which are highly preferred. Now I'm going to demonstrate these for you, so don't worry. So here you would place an array of 6 to 8 items in front of your learner. You would say pick one, let them engage in it, record your data, rearrange the items by moving them closest to you on the right side to the furthest left. You can say my turn and take the item away and begin again, saying pick one. The original MSWO has 8 items in the array, but you can use the brief MSWO by putting only 6 items in the array and doing it 3 times. Studies have done this, and it was sufficient in identifying potential reinforcers. The way to conduct this would be to set up the table with an array of toys first thing in the morning or the first time that you're seeing the child for that session or the individual. Once they come to the table and select the toy, record the data. The child may take a break from the table and engage in the activity, so during that time you would rearrange the array. So now we're going to conduct the multiple stimulus without replacement preference assessment. So again, you're going to be placing about 6 to 8 items. Again, I'm sticking to my 5 at this point just for the model, the video model here. But you want about 6 to 8 items. You're going to tell your learner to pick one. You're going to let them engage in that item for some time, record the data, and then you're going to rearrange the items, but you are not going to replace the item that they selected. So we'll go through that in just a moment. All right, pick one. Okay, so they've selected that one. So while they're engaging in that item, I can take the item and move it, and I'm just going to rearrange that array. So now I'm down to 4 items. I'm going to mark my data. I've got my timer going, so that's great. And then I say, okay, my turn. Thank you. Pick one. Perfect. Marking my data, got my timer going. Perfect. All right, my turn. Pick one. Okay, so now I want you to notice as the learner is engaging in that item, once they make their selection, I quickly rearrange my array. I don't wait till the end of the time. I get my timer going, and I'm going to give you guys a reality of what 30 seconds really feels like, because this is, we're at the 20-second mark now. We're getting closer. 30 seconds is, fairly good. Obviously, it's not a lot of time, but all right, my turn. Pick one. I'll give you another idea of what 30 seconds really feels like. But obviously having your timer or a clock in the room that you can really pay attention to. I prefer a timer or stopwatch of some sort. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, what if the learner tries talking to you during the preference assessment and, or they want you to play with them? You can join in, that's okay. I could go like, yeah, whoosh, woo, yeah, and interact with them. Okay, we went over the 30 seconds, that's fine. My turn, thank you. Pick one. Perfect, and of course I would mark my data. And that is how you conduct MSWO. So it's a multiple stimulus without replacement, known as an MSWO. When conducting a preference assessment, ensure that the items are of equal distance apart from the learner. People are likely to engage in low effort behaviors. Greater reach response is required for items that are further away. So the child may not take an item because it's out of reach, but at the same time, sometimes when you put an item further away, it allows you to really see the preference. So the child may then get up and reach for the item, which would give you more likely what the preference is. So I prefer to put the items further away from the child to get them to reach for the item, so I can really ensure that that is a preference of theirs. When using bigger items that cannot be presented at the table, such as trampoline or park, you can use pictures. Place the array of pictures on the table and use the same procedure. Once they select it, the child should have access to that item if possible. If they're a learner that can wait, then you can hold off until later. You may also find that taking the item away from the learner to run your next trial is problematic. Giving up the reinforcer may trigger problem behaviors. We have a little girl that will simply say no to you if you attempt to take the toy. When we say my turn and attempt to take the reinforcer away would usually turn into some kind of problem behavior. Using an all done bin could help reduce these issues, or possibly a warning prior to the end of their time with that reinforcer, such as using a timer. We've used this a lot with children so they know and they can expect the removal of that item. Some of the other downsides to this procedure is a child's ability. If a child cannot scan the array, this would not be a good selection for them. The child may make more random choices rather than selecting the most preferred item. From the point of view of the child, they are shown 8 items, let's say. Now they have a few moments to make a selection based on their likes and dislikes. They may not be able to decide that quickly. Now I'm sharing these advantages and disadvantages so you know what to use with your learner and you can decide with your supervisor. Think about going into an ice cream parlor. You see a variety of ice cream choices and it could take you a long time before you can decide on the one you want. Remember, preferences can change from moment to moment. Although you may like chocolate, strawberry, and mocha, what are you craving right now? Now, it may take you a few moments to decide, if not longer. Now, I completely understand if you need to stop this class to go get ice cream. Those flavors look really good. Another possible problem that can happen, it happens to us, I know I do this, that is, saving the best for last. A child may select items, but saving the best one for last. Now, this may not be a common problem and may occur more with advanced learners. Here is a chart, just to summarize everything for you and can be used when you are studying. Remember, preference assessments are predictions of possible reinforcers. That is why I call them potential reinforcers. We need to validate that these are reinforcers. This is an important question. The only way we would know this is by giving the item contingent on behavior and watch the behavior over time. Does it improve or not? We would need to deliver the item contingent on the behavior. We would then observe the rate of responding. For instance, when a child is given cookie contingent on this specific behavior, we would see a good rate of responding. The child is answering quickly and working effectively. It's basically what I call the child showing motivation and willing to work to gain access to this item. But when given Play-Doh contingent on that same behavior, we see responding is low. And we see more mistakes, off-task behavior, and so on. We would conclude that Play-Doh is not effective and may not be a reinforcer. Now, this is a common problem in practice, I feel, because a therapist working with the child may have conducted a preference assessment, since that computer ranked the highest, but does not give the computer during the child's programming. The therapist may be giving the child Play-Doh after the trials. Now, you might be wondering why. When I observed this with the learner specifically, I would see that the responding was slow, eyes looking dazed, looking off to the side, and not really engaged with his therapist. Responses are incorrect and sloppy. So when I asked the therapist, what are the highly preferred potential reinforcers? They may say something like, well, he loves computer. And I ask them often, why isn't he getting access to the computer then? Sadly, the response is often, well, it takes too much time from the teaching table, or the computer is on the other side of the classroom. However, when we work through this with a therapist and we run a trial, give the learner access to the computer contingent on the behavior, and run more trials, we see that the child is working faster, better, and responses have increased and his learning is improving. And that's what we want. So you can test an item contingent on behavior using a progressive ratio analysis. There are other ways of doing this as well, but to give you an example with progressive ratio analysis, you would deliver the item contingent on the previously acquired skills such as placing a puzzle piece in, then increasing the schedule within a single session. So you start with an FR1. Remember, this is a fixed ratio. meaning the reinforcer will follow after every single response, then increase it to an FR3, FR5, and so on. You'll be watching for ratio strain, which is when responding stops at a given schedule of reinforcement, and the child does not complete the task. If the breakpoint occurred at FR7, then you want to set your FR schedule to FR5, just below the ratio strain. In practice, as you're working with the learner, you may observe how your learner is behaving at the table with you. Are they looking, responding, answering correctly? Or do you feel like they're looking away, disengaged, slow responding, prompt dependent? All right, so let's wrap this up. Don't do an assessment where taking a toy will evoke a problem behavior. Use a different assessment, such as a free operant assessment. Embed choice making. You can have the child choose at the end of the task, since the motivation may have changed. You can verbally ask, give an array of pictures to choose from, or have a reinforcer booklet for the learner to choose from as well. So now that you've assessed potential reinforcers and tested them contingent on the behavior, you may now be ready to use these items during teaching. What I like to do is select the top 6 to 8 items and place them in a reinforcer bag or bin for the learner. These can be offered just before a teaching trial. It would look very much like a pair choice, placing 2 items on the table and allowing the learner to have access or sample the reinforcer prior to teaching. For some learners, you can ask them which item they want, or they can pick from the pictures you place on the table. Now again, what you want changes from moment to moment. Going back to the ice cream example, today you want chocolate ice cream, but later in the day, you may want vanilla ice cream. So remember this when you're teaching. Don't assume your learner is going to want to play with Play-Doh all the time, even if it is ranked the highest preferred item. Having access to computer or marble run may be something they want more in that moment. What is the purpose of a preference assessment? A, to identify reinforcers. B, to predict potential reinforcers. C, to assess whether the child can scan reinforcers. Or D, all of the above. And the correct response is B, to predict potential reinforcers. Billy selected Play-Doh 100% of the time during one of the preference assessments used. This means A, Play-Doh is a reinforcer. B, Play-Doh may be a reinforcer. C, Play-Doh is not a reinforcer. Or D, there is no way of knowing. And the correct response is B, Play-Doh may be a reinforcer. To determine if an item is a reinforcer, you will need to do what? A, give it to the child and see if he consumes it. B, hold it in front of the child and see how it impacts his behavior. C, give it to the child and see how long he interacts with it. Or D, give it to the child following a behavior and see how it impacts the behavior. And the correct response is D. Give it to the child following a behavior and see how it impacts the behavior. Remember, if the behavior goes on an increase, that means it's improving the behavior and it is potentially a reinforcer, and therefore you can use it. Let the child play freely in their environment. What type of preference assessment is this? A, indirect. B, free operant. C, trial-based method. And the correct response is B, free operant. Way to go. What are some of your son's favorite toys? The therapist asked Billy's mom. What type of preference assessment is this? A, indirect. B, free operant. C, trial-based method. And the correct response is A, indirect. The RBT placed 8 items on the table and represented the same 8 items after 30 seconds. Which assessment was used? A, single stimulus preference assessment, B, paired choice, C, MSWO, or D, MSW. And the correct response is D, MSW. The RBT placed 1 item on the table and said to the child to pick one. Which assessment was used? A, single stimulus preference assessment, B, paired choice, C, MSWO, or D, MSW. And the correct response is A, single stimulus preference assessment. Good job. The RBT placed 2 items on the table and said to the child to pick one. Which assessment was used? A, single stimulus preference assessment, B, paired choice, C, MSWO, or D, MSW. And the correct response is B, paired choice. The RBT placed 6 items on the table and said to the child to pick one. After the child picked one, she moved the items without replacing the item. Which assessment was used? A, single stimulus preference assessment, B, paired choice, C, MSWO, or D, MSW. And the correct response is C, MSWO. The RBT told the child the item was all done during the preference assessment. The child began screaming and kicking. What could she do to problem solve this? A, grab it from him and say, "That's not sharing." B, follow through until the child gives up the item. C, give the child what? C, give the child another reinforcer. Or D, use an all done bin and verbal prompt like, "My turn." And the correct response is D, use an all done bin and verbal prompt like, "My turn." Way to go. The RBT notices that the child keeps picking the item on the left side. The RBT notices the child keeps picking the item on the left-hand side during the preference assessment. This is a common problem known as A, left-handed selection, B, side bias, C, he's probably just picking in order, or D, none of these. And the correct response is B, side bias. The RBT notices that the child is distracted at the table, looking at others walking by, answering slowly. What may be causing this? A, inappropriate reinforcer selection, B, lack of understanding of the reinforcer contingent on the behavior, C, none of these, or D, both A and B. And the correct response is D, both A and B. Jackson picks a car to play with before his teaching trial. When his therapist sends him off to play with the cars, he gravitates towards the sandbox. The therapist says, "No, Jackson, you picked the cars, you need to play with them." The therapist calls Jackson back to the table after 1 minute and begins teaching. Jackson is given a choice again between cars and bubbles. He picks cars. During teaching, Jackson begins vocal scripting. What may be the issue here? A, reinforcers can change from moment to moment. B, the paired choice items The pair choice items displayed are not preferred items in that moment. C, when Jackson changed his mind, he was redirected to the cars. Or D, all of the above. And the correct response is D, all of the above. Okay, so I want to just go through very quickly graphing some of your preference assessments. So taking data is very important, but ensuring that we take the data and the information that we've gathered and we display it in a way that it can be read by others is also very important. So we did a whole topic on graphing, and we talked about line graphs and cumulative graphing. We highlighted a little bit of bar graphs and when we use them. And I think I mentioned to you guys that we might use them during preference assessments. And maybe I even promised that I would show you guys what that looked like. So if my memory hasn't failed me, here's an example. So this is something that we do. We do this with our paired choice preference assessments, and we get a percentage basically of the items selected during that preference assessment. So if we take a look here, you can see that the reinforcers or the potential reinforcers are listed along this column here. And then we have numbers here. And what we do is we make them out of 5. And this is just in terms of getting it to be graphed on our computer. Now, you might graph this using paper and pencil, or you might use the computer Excel or numbers, whichever system that you use. It's a nice way, and what I really want you to see is it's a nice way of showing what each item got in that percentage. So you could see, for example, pirate ship here got 100%, and so did clock. So these are really preferred items for this learner. We know that when we did the preference assessment and we conducted it a few times, those were the items that got selected the most. Then you can see that some were in that 60 percentile, and then the others that kind of fell below that may not have been as preferred. If we go to another one, now we've selected different items. You could see that trampoline here got 0%. So, presenting them with the trampoline, nothing happened. They didn't engage in it. They didn't select it. And also you can see here marble run never got selected. But for, some of the toys, like here it was a Paw Patrol toy, got 100%. And again, really important to see that, some items are ranking that 100% while others are just at the 0. They never were selected. And what we do is we graph each set every time, and we get an idea of what they like and what they don't like. And of course preferences change because we know that. And, I just want to bring your attention to this. Like, for example, Toolbox here got 100% when we did it this time. But after just a few weeks when we did it again, Toolbox went down to 60%. But here's Trampoline. So we tried Trampoline again because we want to see if there would be a preference at some point, and it went to 20%. And then, of course, we got here Marble Run. Here it doesn't show the percentage, but as you can see, it was at about 40%. And so compared to the first time that we did it when he got 0%, we can see that the motivation for that item is starting to, to happen, and maybe now they're becoming more motivated for that item. So just because something gets 0%, in March or something, and then let's say you do it, a couple weeks into March, that preference could change, and that's really important, and that's something just to keep in mind. So again, here you see the preferences, and again, here Trampoline is, I think the last one was 20%, if I'm not mistaken, and now it's going up to 25%. So we see that improvement there. And then, here you could see there's a lot of stability across items. Not a lot of, like loving whatever the item, like Toolbox and Marble Run. I mean, Marble Run that was once at 0% has increased, so now there's that preference for that. So preferences change. That's really important. Graphing it is really nice because then you can really look, at the preferences with your supervisor and you can make adjustments. And then you can also talk to the other team members about it and show them that, these are items that they really like versus items that they don't like, what they liked, a month ago, they don't like anymore, and what they didn't like a month ago, now they really like. So that's really important to note and something to analyze with your team. My final thoughts. I caution you when working with a learner, do not get lazy when it comes to reinforcers. Be creative, be giving, and give the item the child wants, not what's easier for you. At the end of the day, you want to show that your learner is learning because of you and your quality in your use of reinforcer selection, creativity, and effort that you have put in. Don't put food and toys in the same array. Children will more likely go for food, and so just be aware of that when you're putting items in the array. Remember, there are side biases, so ensure you vary the way the items are displayed in the array. If problem behaviors occur in these assessments, you may need to use a free operant assessment, because the last thing that you want to do is provoke problem behaviors during a preference assessment. If the learner goes for more than one item, try to block their other hand from selecting and restate your SD. Pick one. Direct observation is more reliable than indirect assessment, such as asking parents or teachers. Preference assessments are great at identifying potential reinforcers. These reinforcers must be tested contingent on the behavior. If the behavior increases, the item is acting as a reinforcer. Keep in mind individual differences, immediacy, and contingency. Motivation for an item can change from moment to moment. Assessing the value of the reinforcer in that moment is essential before teaching. Thank you for your time today and happy studying. Until the next time. So we're going to conduct the single stimulus preference assessment. So you'll have the sheet there in front of you. This is for our competency. So what I want you guys to do is take the information down. I've already prepared my data sheet ready to go. On your sheet, what you're going to do is write down the items that I present and then the time in which he played with it. Okay, and here we go. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome. The fire truck wants you.
That's awesome. Let's do the next one.
How do you open this?
Just like this. Let me show you. There's a piece of Velcro there. You pull,
And then
inside is,
and the box.
yeah, there's some books in there.
Cupcake Confusion, Dream Dollhouse, and I know this one. Magical Movie Night. Whoa.
Can you put the books away for me?
Okay.
Thanks. You're a great helper today.
How long have I had the books?
Maybe we'll tell everybody at the end, but we'll see what everybody else got. We'll compare notes. How long do you think?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
He flipped.
Whoa. What is that?
Want to check your ears?
Oh, yeah, sure. Ooh.
How does it feel?
It's a little painful.
How about this? Where does
Yeah.
it go?
Well, it looks like a needle.
Oh. In your ears?
Do they put needles in your ears?
No.
No.
Okay.
All right, let's get rid of that one.
Okay.
You're a superstar.
This
There you
is
go.
the airplane. That'll just set off. Drop. Oh, where's green? What's in green?
I think green is broken.
Yep.
Why do you think it's broken?
I don't know. There's a spiral and the red could be like that.
Okay. All right, so we're going to do a little cut here. I want you to listen carefully. The next one that I give you, I want you to not touch it at all.
Oh.
Okay? Don't touch it.
Okay.
Okay, and action. Okay, so as you can see for this one here, I presented the item and he didn't interact with it. So on your notes there, you should make a note about that. So I put down my score. Okay, so let's talk about the results.
Okay.
All right. So we had the 6 different items. The first one was the phone, then the fire truck, the shimmer and shine book, the doctor set, the airplane, and the farm book. So those were the items that I put in order. And that's going to help you when you actually take down your data. You don't have to write it again. You just go A, B, C, D, E, and F. So for A, it was around 10 seconds. So if you got the same, that's great. For B, 11 seconds. For C, it was about 40 seconds. D was about 23 seconds. E, 25 seconds. And F, as you saw, he did not engage in the item, didn't touch it, so I got 0 seconds. And in my notes, it said that he didn't touch it. And so now I would do this again so that we can get a hierarchy to see how long did he spend with each item. The next one that we're going to do is the pair choice preference assessment. So again, on your sheet, you're going to write down for A, phone, B, fire truck. You want to put those away for me?
Okay.
C, shimmer and shine book. D, the doctor set. E, Lego. And F, airplane. So those are the ones that you should put down. And then what you're going to do is you're going to circle which one he selected during the preference assessment. Okay, once you're done that, we're going to get started, okay? Awesome. Okay. Pick one.
Fire truck.
All right.
Do I hear something?
You might. There are other people in the building.
Is it almost time for lunch?
It is actually. It's around 11:30, so it's close to lunch.
Yep.
Are you finished with that one? All right. So can I have that, please? Thank you. Okay, pick one.
This one.
All right.
I love playing with the phone. Yay. The phone is so... I can exactly turn the one like that.
Beep, beep.
Touch 2. Wait. No. Touch 3. God.
All right, buddy, my turn. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Pick one.
The doctors.
Oh.
How long do I get this?
Well, you can have any time between 20 and 30 seconds if you'd like. So you still have time. When I say my turn, then you can give it up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Watch this.
That is cool. All right, I think time's up on that one. Thank you. Let's get the next one.
A and E.
Oh, are you looking at my sheet?
Yeah, it's A-E. Are we going to do both of them?
Yeah. I'm just going to get my items together.
Okay.
All right. Pick Pick one.
Lego.
All right.
Look what can I make with 3 Lego?
Well, what can you make?
I think, how about this? What is this? Can you guess?
Is that the letter A?
No. I don't have something for here.
That's
and
right.
watch.
Oh, so what was that? Was that a bridge?
Yeah.
It was
And
a
it
bridge.
fell.
It fell. All right, time's up. Oh, thanks. Are you watching my timer?
Yeah.
You sure are. Okay. Pick one. Oh, cool.
Touch the number 4. You go back. Touch the number 3. Good. Touch the number 4. Good. Touch the number 5. Good. Touch the number 6. Good. Touch the number 7. You go back 11. Touch the number 6. Good. Touch the number 7.
All right, it's my turn. Thank you very much.
This is finished.
That is. Pick one.
This one,
Okay.
I never choose B.
You never choose B?
Yeah.
Once you did,
Yeah, I did.
but you didn't choose it this time.
Wait a minute. Did I just say B?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I chose C.
What do you do with the books?
Read them.
Yeah. What do you think of doing that with the books?
Why is there only 3 books in here?
I don't know. There's one missing. Do you think somebody took my book?
1. Can I count how much? Oh, no. I'm running out of time.
That's okay. Would you like some more time?
Yeah. 1, 2.
Okay, buddy. It's my turn, so you're going to have to put them away, unfortunately.
Okay.
We'll count them another time. How about that?
There's actually 3. Can
There's
you
3.
put them in, please?
Sure. Okay, we're going to do our last one,
And then
maybe you'll be done.
maybe.
What do you think?
Yeah,
Should I tell
maybe.
you if you're going to be done or not?
Maybe.
So we're going to do...
The B and D.
Gonna do this one and the fire truck. Where's the fire truck? Okay, let's do that again. All right.
This one.
Pick one.
This one I already did. Watch this again.
You like that, don't you? All right, so while you're playing with that, I can give you the books. You can count that as well because I'm going to talk to everybody,
3.
okay? There's 3. I know you counted. Okay, so let's go through our results, see what everybody got. So you had the phone, the fire truck, the shimmer book, the shimmer and shine book, the doctor set, the Lego, and the airplane. So your first one should be marked as B, second one as A, third as, do you want to help us out here?
Yep.
D. The fourth one as
E.
E. Fifth as
A.
The
C.
sixth is C.
Yeah.
And the last one that you selected was D. That's right. So when we look at it, is there a side bias? No. So we know he was selecting from both sides. So that's excellent. And then we'd have to do this a few more times to get a hierarchy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody, we're going to conduct the MSWO. And on your sheet, you should get it prepared. And number 1 is going to be the Shimmer and Shine book. The next one is the farm book, then the airplane, then the phone, and then the doctor set. And you're going to circle which one that he selects, okay? And pick one.
This one.
All right.
Can you guys? How can you open this?
Does it slide out? Oh, there, like that.
Yay!
It slides.
A cat. A cat is in here. A sheep. A mouse.
Okay, my turn.
Here we
Thank
are.
you. Pick one.
Doctor. No way. Where is it?
like
What
doing
number
that.
is this?
I have that one as number 5.
Oh, number 5.
Are you going to give yourself a needle? All right, buddy, time's up.
Here you are.
Thank you. Pick one.
Airplane. You're gonna fly it? No! How many more seconds?
You can have another 15.
How long did we do it for?
Well, you can have anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds. If you want more time, that's great. If you're finished, you can let me know too.
I'm finished.
Okay. So we'll just pick another one.
This one I already picked.
Yeah, but you can do it again.
Okay. Shimmer and shine. Do you know what shimmer is here?
Are they fairies?
Where's shimmer and shine?
Oh, you mean which one? Okay, but do you know what they are?
Yeah.
Are they fairies?
Genies.
They're genies. Okay. I actually don't know which one is shimmer and which one's shine. I'm going to say this one is shimmer and that one's shine. What do you think?
No, that's shimmer and that's shine.
Oh, I just did it
Okay,
wrong.
I'm finished.
All right, time's up. Pick the last one if you'd like.
Come to 8. I touched 8. Number 9 and number 0. Good. Do you know why it's been fast? Watch.
Why?
I don't know. I'm calling you Shasta.
Okay. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. What are you doing tomorrow?
I don't know. I gotta cut off. Bye. Here.
All right, I think we're done. Thank you very much. Okay, so here's an example of what the data sheet could look like. Now, you have to remember every data sheet can look different. Sometimes supervisors will make up their own data sheet. So, of course, the assumption will be that you would be trained on that. And if not, of course, get training on that and speak to your supervisor about that. But for this example here, we have the stimulus or the stimuli listed. Let's try that again. We have the stimuli listed there. So number 1 is shimmer and shine. Number 2 is the farm book. Number 3 is the airplane. 4 is the phone. And 5 is the doctor set. Remember, we only did 5 items for this MSWO. And then when we look at what was selected, you could see the first thing that he selected was the farm book. So that's something that you should have written there. The doctor set was next. The airplane followed. Then the shimmer and shine book was selected, and finally the phone was then selected. Now, of course, you're going to have to repeat this a few times so that you can get that hierarchy, because right now all we know is that the farm book was selected first, but it doesn't mean that the next time if we do the preference assessment that farm book is going to get selected again the first time. It may get selected the second or third time in that, but you'll eventually get a hierarchy to see which one was the most preferred, and then now you have some potential reinforcers that you can use during teaching.